Hi there. In this video presentation I want to show that by cultivating a non-reactive mind we create and maintain a bridge between the spiritual God and our soul. So taking myself as an anecdotal piece of evidence, as an example of this, these are all the negative forces that I carry with me pretty much every day to one degree or another. I have all these that are listed here, including low self-esteem and memories from childhood and all that. And all these negative mentalizations or negative forces weave a kind of web or kind of column of twisted metal which proceeds up the spine, and all these energies are mine and belong to the I, me, and mine category of ego thinking and reactive thinking and self-preservation. It's not that these forces are necessarily negative in the moral sense, although we'll come to that in a minute. It's just that they are forces that are incident upon the conscious mind, and they sort of represent, or they create a kind of field, if you like, literal field as it might be, and then the triggers, which are shown here, they're like seeds that take plant that take root in the soil, which has already been prepared as poisoned soil. And into this poisoned soil, these triggers come in, and these are in the here and now. Of course, these are just triggers. And then what happens is that I go into crisis mode, and then I lose my temper, and then all hell breaks loose, and I become uncontrollable. Basically, that's the only way to describe it, really. And but the point about it is that every time a trigger happens or triggers, I draw upon all these negative thought forms, and they come into my mind, and then they create this fury, this anger, this resentment, this unbelievable pain and need for vengeance and war and force and fire. And I must say that what maintains or what leads to a repeat of these behaviours is an unhealthy pleasure in losing my temper. I just enjoy it. It's like alcohol. It's like a drug addict. It's like someone taking amphetamines. I mean, obviously, your brain emits noradrenaline, and it stimulates the pleasure center of the brain, so that violence becomes a pleasure, what I call an unhealthy pleasure, because it leads to incredible depression afterwards and a terrible sort of hangover, and terrible distress and distress to others and to community and things like that. You see, so this is kind of the situation, and so then after a while, after many, many years of being like this, of repeating these patterns of thought over and over again, you become a slave to them. You become a victim, and you go into a general feeling of victimhood, which is supposed to be about the past or the distant past, but is really about the fact that you can't control your emotions, and you become a victim of your uncontrolled emotions, you see. So I end up becoming a slave to them. And it is this energy of slavery, this energy of victimhood, this unhealthy pleasure, which creates a sort of negative energy upon which the Demiurge feeds. Now, it feeds on positive energy as well. It feeds on the whole contents of this dialectical world. But it especially likes negative energy, because negative energy is so much stronger than the energy of love. And so, but I think we'll better stick to the unhealthy, negative side of things, really, because otherwise we'll get stuck into a conversation about dualism. and non-dualism, and I don't want to go that way, particularly, not yet anyway. So the demiurge feeds off my negative energy, off my negative thought patterns, which are repeated over and over and over, and which then create a sort of victim mentality in me, which is supposed to be directed towards some sort of past trauma, but is in actual fact really more about the present than it is about the past, you see. So that's the crisis that I normally go into. But you do have a choice. You do have free will. You do have a choice. You don't have to go down that path. In Plato's Phaedrus, there are two horses, and one is the black horse of negativity, and the other is the white horse of positivity. And you do have a choice. So you have, between the time, like everyday stress, obviously has an effect on you, right? And if you draw a sort of graph here, you draw stress, and the stress, you might get up in the morning and stress levels are low. They might quickly rise due to one thing or another, due to a bad dream, or thinking about negative thoughts, or thinking about negative thoughts in the past, or past things that people have done to you, and all this, and resentment, and all that kind of stuff. So stress levels, and then a trigger comes along, and then the stress levels go right up, you see. But there's a little gap where the amount of stress is manageable. But instead of managing that stress, I then choose to go into a crisis point. But crisis also means, in Greek, ancient Greek, means choice as well. So we always have a choice in life whether to go down the negative road, or to the positive route instead. And the point about it is that if there are various things that you can do, which you have to do consciously, okay? Once you're sort of in this crisis mode and you're wondering whether to go left or right, there are a few things that you can do, but you have to consciously make up your mind to do them, okay? First of all, is just become aware of your breath, and just to take 30 seconds even, just to become aware of your breath, and that produces a calming effect. The second thing you can do is to draw on a spiritual image, and this can be anything from the sort of what I call the Homoousios list. So it could be an icon of Christ, or it could be an image of the Holy Grail, or the cross itself, or the ladder, or any other Christian symbol, or symbol of spirituality that comes into your mind. And it's probably significant which image does come into your mind. In fact, it could be an angel, it could be the angel Gabriel, it could be the angel Michael, whatever comes into your mind. The third thing is some kind of happy memory. So instead of drawing on some past trauma, you draw on the happiest memory that you possibly can draw on, and you just fix it there in your mind. And then you need to, this is an interesting one, you need to have an image in your mind of one male that you admired, one female that you admire. This could be from someone from now, or someone from the past, or a literary figure, or spiritual figure, or a guru of some kind, a male guru, a female guru, female poet. And then lastly, if you can try and remember an uplifting quotation, or an uplifting word, agape, for example, or Jesus Christ. These are uplifting words. These are words which which enable you to change the mood, and to make the mood more positive. And you keep hold of these images, and the breath, on the breath awareness. And gradually, you begin to walk away from trouble. You begin to walk away from going down into rage and fury and anger and depression and all that bad stuff, and you go into all the good stuff instead. And this creates a spiritual bridge between soul and God. It's one of the ways that you can build a bridge, because a bridge unites, and love unites, and these are ways of creating a love bridge between soul and God. And so if you have time to do this, and normally you do have time to choose the path of mind liberation, or the path that leads to slavery and victimhood. And if you choose the path of mind liberation, then this creates a healthy pleasure in a non-reactive mind. Now, of course, in the dialectical world, it is true that that all energies, mental energies, are fed upon by the demiurge. But it's no doubt, but it is also true that it doesn't get so much nutritional value, as it were, from healthy pleasures and a non-reactive mind cultivated than it does from unhealthy pleasure and a reactive mind cultivated. Basically, and plus, of course, you're maintaining and building this bridge between soul and God. So you're sort of depriving the demiurge on one hand of his pleasure, of his sick pleasure on one hand, and you're building a bridge to God on the other. And this all might seem quite obvious as it is written to now. And of course, a lot of people will say, what about this kind of idea of, of expressing yourself, right? You've got this flame, you've got this fire burning, and it's the fire of yourself, and this is who you are as well. I mean, you are anger as well as peace. You're war as well as peace. So, why can't you be allowed to express yourself? But the only problem is, you see, that once you get into a cycle of expression, you're just simply putting more wood on the fire. You're building the fire to a higher and higher pitch until it becomes actually self-destructive. So you're doing yourself harm by allowing self-expression to become unmanageable and twisted and self-destructive. So it's better not to put the fire on or wood on the fire, or the fire on the wood for that matter. And this does become a moral issue, because if you walk away from trouble, if you walk away from that alcohol violence, from that noradrenaline rush of expressing yourself, so-called, you can actually, if you develop self-control instead of destruction, you actually are creating God. You're actually behaving in a moral way, not only externally in terms of your external behaviors get better, but internally you're also creating more insight into this bridge between soul and God. You're also reaching soul level, and you do have a sort of moral imperative there to give energy to the good God rather than to the demiurge. And as I say, the choice is always yours. It is yours, because you can choose to react to stimuli, to triggers, or you can choose not to react to them. And all this, of course, is very, very well known to Buddhists. Of course, the non-reactive mind is a Buddhist quality to cultivate. But it doesn't matter what you call it, Buddhist or Gnostic or whatever it is. It's just the right way to go. It's the right way, instead of the crappy self-destructive way, which just leads to pain and suffering, and leads to a strengthening of the demiurge, who is lord of pain and suffering, the ultimate lord of pain and suffering, and the lord of ultimate pain and suffering, for that matter. So this is the theory, and of course, it's all very well. It's like an alcoholic saying, "I'm not going to drink again." I'm not going to lose my temper again. I'm going to be cool. But every time a trigger comes up, the person like myself draws on all these negative things, this negative list down here, forgets all about the positive stuff over here, and creates for himself a stick for his own back, literally. And it's a self-flagellation. It really is. It's self-harm. So it's not even like I'm expressing myself, because if you express yourself to the degree of self-harm, then that's balderdash, really, isn't it? But of course, the person makes a vow. He says, "Oh, I'm never going to have another drink. I'm never going to lose my temper. I'm never going to get in a fight in a bar." And of course, the next week they do. So, but it comes to this, really. It comes to crisis. It comes to, do you really, really want to stop losing your temper? Do you really, really want to stop drinking? and it's only you that can decide to do that. Once, I mean, because there's more pleasure in walking away from trouble than going into trouble. I know that Aleister Crowley said he liked trouble. He liked looking for trouble. He liked it because it felt strong. But ultimately, if it leaves you weaker than you were before, then that's not real strength, you see. If you're really looking for strength, and if you're really looking for something which is powerful, then you'll look for the bridge between you and God, and not look for the abyss, which contains only the Demiurge. So we'll have to see. And having made this video, you will say, well, healer, heal thyself, which is a fair point to make. And we'll see over the next weeks. I will report back to you and say, does this technique actually work? Can I actually walk away from violence and trouble, from aggression and all the subsequent miseries of that? Can I actually walk away, and can I actually become aware of my breath, and become aware of all these positive things that I've listed here? Or will I slip back will I throw myself into the lake of fire once again? But if you seek mind liberation, even in the face of horrendous triggers and horrendous negativity, if you can seek mind liberation despite all these things that are dragged up from the past, and from your present, and from your and anxiety about the future, if you can find mind liberation or seek mind liberation, with all this in front of you, and behind you, and to the left of you and to the right of you, which you'd often you stand in the middle of a cross, really, crossroads, and the triggers are coming down on top of you, and you could go to the negative side, and there's negativity coming up from the earth as well. So you have to disregard the three negative poisons that are coming into you, and seek instead the breath awareness, and the peace, and the quiet, and the pleasure of peace, and the pleasure of establishing true self and true will.